Find the flag to your left.
Good evening, Ransom Middle School Tigers and parents. Hope you recognize that voice. I do those call-outs every Sunday right about 4:30. And I'm that very proud principal here at Ransom Middle School. And one of the reasons I am very proud, I have to mention Mr. Rington and Mr. Kershaw as far as what they do with over 250 students in the band here. And they, I don't know how they do it, all the different instruments. And each year during the MPA, they somehow perform at a superior rate. So I mean, what you're about to hear is going to be astounding. So for, right, real quick, just give it up for these kids. I mean, I want to take this opportunity also to welcome all the parents, grandparents. I see we have a few teachers out here also. I see Ms. Greenfield over there and Ms. Brown and Mr. Standard. If any of our teachers are out here other than what I just mentioned, mind standing up and be recognized real quick, please? Anybody else? So why don't you three stand up and wave to the crowd? Come on, come on. One of the reasons I'm so proud to be principal here at Ransom Middle is I got the best administrative team, I'm telling you right now, that anybody could ask for. My two assistant principals are right here also. Ms. Hill Phillips, please stand up, please, and wave to the crowd. Along with Ms. Hill. Also, I would just like to thank Hillcrest for allowing us to use this beautiful facility. If we didn't have this place right here, we'd be trying to cram you all in our gym. So I don't think that'd work out too well. So but anyhow, thank you for Hillcrest, and please give it up for Hillcrest. Let us use this place. One quick thing before I turn this mic over or shut it off and stop talking. Today is National Hero Day or something like that. And I heard that Batman was on campus. I usually stops by my office. And everybody knows that I'm a serious superhero kind of guy. I love him. And I believe there's supposed to be another superhero that may be showing up here at some point during the performance. But we'll stand by. We'll wait to see what happens. But with all of that said, I hope you guys sit back and relax and enjoy the performance. Thank you.
Good evening and and welcome to the Ransom Middle School Spring Concert. Our first band on stage this evening is Jazz 2. This ensemble is made up of 7th and 8th graders who are in their 2nd and 3rd year of playing their instruments. The first song we'll be performing for you this evening is a march titled On Wisconsin. You may recognize it as the popular football fight song for the University of Wisconsin football team. Next, we'll perform Dark Ride and go on a mysterious and creepy trip through a dark forest. Last, we'll feature our trumpet players in a fun jazz song titled Trumpet Boogie. Thank you for being here tonight, and we hope you enjoy our concert.
Ladies and gentlemen, give us just a brief moment as we transition to our second performing group of the evening and some soloists here in just a short, brief moment.
The next band to perform this evening is the concert band. The concert band is made up of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who are in their 2nd and 3rd years of playing their instruments. Our first song of the evening is titled Blackthorn March. Dark harmonies and precise hits combine to paint a portrait of Lady Blackthorn, a mysterious figure who rules the outer edges of the Darklands. Next, we will take a trip to Oz with Defying Gravity, a powerful song from the hit musical Wicked. Finally, we will close our concert in a super way with The Incredibles. We hope you enjoy the Ransom Concert Band.
Hey guys, where is my super suit? Where's the rest of my super suit? I need it. The public is in danger and I need my super suit. This is all about the greater good. No one's gonna fess up, huh? Okay, that'll work. I'm gonna sit back down over here and let Mr. Incredible go ahead and save the day then by himself.
You're my hero. As Mr. Marsh knows, the things that we do for these kids, we love them to death, don't we? Symphonic band, if you can go ahead and start making your way up to the stage.
did not prepare them for what I'm about to ask them to do for you. And I feel like I need to do this tonight mainly because what Mr. Kershaw and I get to do on a day in and day out basis is one of the most special things imaginable. And the students that you're seeing come onto stage tonight are held to such a high standard. Matter of fact, a good music performance is one of the highest standards you can ask a student to rise to. It's one of those subjects in school where you tell them your goal is to get at 100A. Anything less is not enough. You're shooting for perfection. In some classes, you have a little bit of leeway. You can miss an answer or two to a question, and depending on how many questions are on the test, you might still be able to pull out an A or a high B. But a music performance is very different, and I want you to hear something tonight. And I'm going to put these guys on the spot. I didn't warn them I was going to do anything. So I'm going to show you two examples. Example one, I'm going to ask them to play a very simple scale for you. And my question, what I needed to do for you is to play every note as perfectly as possible. I don't want them to play any notes wrong. Band, will you please play for the audience the concert B-flat scale? Please play it in whole notes. Please play for them the concert B-flat scale in whole notes. Maddox, do you mind going to the snare drum and just keeping a beat for them by using flam taps? Symphonic band, horns up. Play for the audience a concert B-flat major scale. You play every note right with the best tone quality you can produce. Here we go, band. 1, 2, whole notes begin. That was 16 notes. 16 notes. I am not a math teacher, but if we had a test in math class with 16 questions on it and you miss one, what does that bring your score down to? Help me out, math people. Does it still land within an A range if your 90 is 100? Or if 90 is an A? No. Well, what if they play a song that has 50 notes in it? Compare that to a test that has 50 questions. If they miss one, can they still get an A there? Yeah. Well, let's hear what that scale sounds like if I ask each student to just miss one note. I'm going to ask each student up here, you choose a note in that scale right now, students, and you purposefully play that note incorrectly. Just one. Just one. Okay, so go ahead and think about your scale. Decide which note you're going to play wrong. Now, just one, because you got to play the rest. You still got to be able to get that A. Okay, we're just going to miss one question. All right, here we go. Here's that exact same scale if each student only misses just one note. That's it, just one. That's it. Two, same scale play. Yeah, let's hear it for them, right? This is honestly one of the only classes where their teachers are constantly harping on them for perfection. All right, I just want you guys to see that. That's the kind of standard we hold these guys to every day in the Ransom Band. And Mr. Kershaw and I could not be happier or prouder to work with these students. Brooke, come take the microphone away from me, young lady, and introduce the band on stage.
The next band to perform this evening is the Symphonic Band. The Symphonic Band is made up of 7th and 8th graders who are in their 2nd and 3rd years of playing their instruments. Tonight, the Symphonic Band is going to open their performance with Terracotta Warriors. This song begins with our first chair flute player, Anna Morgan, performing a solo chant on recorder to summon an army of warriors that you will then hear come to life and head to battle. Next, we'll perform Cajun folk songs. The second movement piece, featuring alto saxophone soloist Hannah Wong, was written in honor of the life and traditions of the Cajun people of Louisiana and Texas. Our final selection is The Great Locomotive Chase, which will depict the journey of a fast-moving train. We will have some guests from the Ransom faculty joining us for this final song. Miss Greenfield on flute, Mrs. Brown on clarinet, and Mr. Stanton on tuba. We hope you enjoy the Ransom Symphonic Band.
players, stay put just for a moment. Beginning percussion, beginning brass. Come find your seat, please. Woodwind, stay put for a moment. Bella, Heidi, play the technician for the audience. Yeah, let's hear it for Heidi and Bella. Well done, ladies. Very nice. As we finish setting up the last few of our beginning band students, we have one more student soloist to perform for you tonight on his snare drum. This is Maddox Furlow performing The Colonial Drummer. You're in for a treat, I believe. All right, flute players, clarinet players, come on up, find your spot.
back. So, this has a little bit of a story behind it. So, the kids, they get me to dress up as all kinds of weird stuff randomly throughout the year, or, you know, for the turkey feathers, and last year they made me be a ketchup bottle. That one I almost understood. Okay, Kershaw, yeah, all right. This one, though, on the other hand, at the beginning of the year, first week of school, they come to me, hey, Mr. Lorax, and I'm like, what are you doing? What in the world? And they just keep on doing it over and over and over again. So I finally asked, I said, why are you calling me Mr. Lorax? And they said, Mr. Kershaw, it's because you look like somebody that would like to save the trees. I was like, that's not wrong. All right. So anyway, that being said, I'm going to warm up the beginning band, but
The final band performance of the evening is the beginning band. The students in this band are primarily 6th graders who are in their first year of playing their instruments. Our first song is an energetic and exciting piece called Champion Fanfare. Next, we will perform a song called Gentle Winds, where we will be mimicking the sounds of a soft and moving breeze. Our final song of the evening is The Dragon Lord, where we come face to face with a monstrous beast of the legend. Thank you so much for coming out to our concert tonight. We hope you enjoy the final performance of the evening.
we have something very, very awesome happening this weekend. On Friday, we've got our annual jazz band cookout. I'm going to be slinging a whole lot of burgers, and I'd like it if you would help me to have to sling more. So that being said, there was a QR code up here. Yes, it's back. Yeah. So there's a QR code up here. There's several of them outside in the auditorium area. If you could, if you have not bought a plate and you are not, planning on eating anything specific Friday, but you are going to eat, you might as well come get a burger. So that being said, I'm happy to cook for you guys. It is a big fundraiser. The jazz band's going to be performing, and it's going to be really awesome. That being said, we have one more really big thing to talk about. There's a lot of equipment up here. All this equipment, we have to move, and I'm going to ask you for your help. If you could, please help after the concert's completely finished up, after these kids get off the stage, and just help us get everything out to the trailer, and that would be super, super, super awesome. All right, go team.